In this lesson, we are going to discuss core Java interview questions which are related to OOPS concept. To start with, what do you mean by OOPS concept? Object-oriented programming system, or OOPS, is a programming paradigm or design philosophy. The key idea behind OOPS is that real world can be accurately described as a collection of objects. OOPS brings together data, that is fields, and its behavior, that is methods, in a single location, which is called object. And it makes it easier to understand how a program works based on the concept of objects that contain data and methods. The primary purpose of OOPS is to increase the flexibility and maintainability of programs. Following are the OOPS basic concepts. Class. A class is a blueprint or template for creating objects. It describes attributes and behaviors of the objects. The attributes are known as fields and behaviors are represented by methods. Object is an instance of a class. The key OOPS features are the following: encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. Now each of these features are very important. Coming back to OOPS, why do people use object-oriented programming? OOPS helps in saving development time and cost by reusing code, as once an object is created it can be used in other applications. It makes debugging easier as classes can be tested independently and reuse objects have already been tested. So it is a repetition of the earlier part, that is what OOPS features are present in Java, all four, that is encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction. Now comes the critical parts, like what is encapsulation? Encapsulation is a mechanism of wrapping the data, that is field, and code, that is method, into a single unit. In encapsulation, the variables of a class will be hidden from other classes and can be accessed only through the methods of their current class. Therefore, it is also known as data hiding. Remember this term, data hiding. A Java class is an example of encapsulation. Java Bean is the fully encapsulated class because all the data members are private. Encapsulation is the concept of hiding the implementation details of a class. In Java, we need to declare the variables within the class as private or protected. The client code should access only the public methods rather than accessing the data directly. In one line, it is hiding the data behind the method. So remember this line. What is the benefit of encapsulation? Encapsulation makes it easy to maintain and modify code. The client code is not affected when the internal implementation of the code changes, as long as the public method signatures are unchanged. Encapsulation is achieved by, as I mentioned earlier, access specifiers such as private, protected, etc. Now comes another important feature, that is inheritance. What is inheritance? It is the mechanism by which one class is allowed to inherit the fields and methods of another class. The class whose features are inherited is known as superclass or base class or parent class. The class that inherits the other class is known as subclass or derived class or extended class or child class. The subclass can add its own fields and methods in addition to the superclass fields and methods. Advantage: inheritance supports the concept of reusability. When we want to create a new class and there is already a class that includes some of the code that we want, we can derive our new class from the existing class. By doing this, we are reusing the fields and methods of the existing class. Let's understand this with an example. So following is a sample based class with an attribute named field along with its getter and setter method. Now there is a child class, as we can see over here. This child class extends the base class, and whenever it extends the base class, here from the child class we can access the field of the base class. So in this way we can inherit the method from the base class. So this is only an example, only a simple example. There are many other utilities of inheritance. Let's move to another important feature, very important feature actually, polymorphism. What is polymorphism? The word polymorphism literally means the capacity to take on different forms. In Java, it describes its ability to process objects of various types and classes through a single uniform interface. Polymorphism in Java has two types: compile time polymorphism or static binding. The example is method overloading. Runtime polymorphism, that is dynamic binding. Example is method overriding. Now these two are very common topics for interview questions. Let's start with method overloading. In Java, two or more methods in the same class can have same name if they differ in parameters, that is different number of parameters, different types of parameters, or both. These methods are called overloaded methods, and this feature is called method overloading. To provide some examples, in java.util.date class, it has following overloaded methods. The substring method has one parameter as begin index, and there is another overloaded method which has begin index as well as end index. Similarly, in string class, there are many overloaded methods which are highlighted here. Let me scroll down. So you can see over here index of, there are two overloaded version, last index of, there are another two. Index of has many other overloaded versions here as well. Similarly, last index of. So from the core Java source code itself, we can see the examples of method overloading. Now let's move to another very important topic, method overriding. Method overriding is a feature that allows that parent and child classes to have same method, and in this case, the type of the object determines which method is to be executed. The type of object is determined at the runtime. So this is also known as dynamic binding. In case of method overloading, it was static binding because it was at compile time. Now, it is very important to mention or remember this term dynamic binding or dynamic late binding. It is related to method overriding. Let's have a look at the example. Suppose we have a base class named parent with a simple method called test. You can see the sysout inside the test is invoke test inside parent. Similarly, we have a child class that extends parent class and it overrides the test method. The sysout is a bit different. It says invoke test inside child. We have a program. Let's scroll down further. In the code, we have a list where we are adding one parent object and one child object, and we are iterating on top of that list and calling the method. Now, first time I have added parent object, second time I have added child object. But when iterating, I'm considering this object as person object. But when I'm calling the method, as you can see in the console, the specific method of the specific class is called. First time, the test method of the parent is called. Second time, the test method of the child is called. So in this way, as you can see over here, I have written here, first test method of parent object is invoked and next time the test method of child object gets invoked. In the runtime, we can notice that the JVM figures out the object type and runs the method that belongs to that particular object. Although at compile time, we are referring to the items only using parent object. So that is very important. The type of object is determined at the runtime. So this is known as dynamic binding or late binding. This is also known as dynamic method dispatch. So remember these terms. The interviewer can ask different terms, different jargons they can use. Remember them so that you are prepared. What is the difference between runtime polymorphism and compile time polymorphism? Runtime polymorphism means function call is resolved at runtime. It means which function code will execute in response to a particular function call is not known till execution of the program. That is method overriding actually. Compile time polymorphism means function call is resolved at compile time. It means which function code will execute in response to a particular function call is known to the compiler at compile time. That is method overloading. How would you come to know when you should use method overloading and when you should use method overriding? This is a tricky one. So whenever we need to implement similar functionalities for multiple data types, writing overloaded methods for different data types is a general pattern. For example, the println method of java.io.printstream can print any kind of data type, short, long, float, string or object, whatever. So it has a multiple overloaded versions of different data types. Whereas overriding enables a child class to give its own implementation to a method, which is already provided by the parent class without even modifying the parent class code. This is helpful when a class has several child classes. So if a child class needs to use the parent class method, it can use it, and the other classes that want to have different implementation can use overriding feature to make changes without touching the parent class code. So here you can see the overloaded methods for print and println. This is where overloading makes the job easy. If overloading wasn't available, we could have ended up clumsy APIs like print string, print object, print integer, etc. So method overloading provides you flexibility while writing any API. Method overriding is helpful when we need fine-grained implementations in subclasses for methods defined in base class. For example, java.util.abstractMap class provides a skeletal implementation of the map interface, and it has methods like get, put, size, isEmpty, etc. Classes like hashmap, treemap, etc. extend abstract map but override those methods as per specific requirement. What is the use of instance of operator in Java? The answer is an instance of is a type comparison operator. It can check whether an object is of a specified type, that is class, subclass, interface or not. Just like other comparison operators, it returns true or false. And remember, comparing any object instance with a null type through instance of operator returns false. Let's understand this with an example. Suppose we have two classes, parent and child. Child is extending parent. So here we can see this is our parent class which has one method. This is our child class, which is extending the parent class. Now here in the code we are using instance of. First we are creating one parent object, then one child object, then another child object reference which points to null. So if we check if parent is instance of parent, it would be true. Parent is instance of child, no, because child extends parent, the reverse is not true, so it would be false. Similarly, if we check child is instance of parent, it would be true. The last one, the second child, which is pointing to null, if we check it is instance of child, it would return false. At the bottom we have the console output. So depending on the scenario, the instance of operator tells us whether it is an instance of a particular class or interface or type. One tricky question here, depending on polymorphism or inheritance, is suppose a superclass method throws IO exception and the subclass tries to override it, but the method tries to throw exception instead of IO exception. What will happen? This is a tricky one. The answer is the overriding method can declare the same or subtype of checked exception. Remember, checked exception to what was declared in the overridden method. So in this case, it would be a compile time error. Let us understand with an example. Here we have one base class that has a test method that throws IO exception, whereas the child class that is extending the base class, the test method in this case throws exception. As you can see, there is a compile time error. It clearly says this exception is not compatible with the throws clause in the base.test. Now if it was, suppose if it was exception at the base level and at the child level it was IO exception, that is subclass, there would have been no problem whatsoever. But this is applicable in case of checked exception, as I mentioned. So I have added one note over here, but the overriding method can throw any unchecked, that is runtime exception, regardless of whether the overridden method declares the exception or not. Another related question, another tricky one is, does the overriding method follow the same rule in case of runtime exception? Answer is, overriding method can throw any unchecked, that is runtime exception, regardless of whether the overridden method declares the exception or not. Let us discuss another very important OOPS feature, that is abstraction. What is abstraction? Abstraction is the process of hiding the details and exposing only the essential features of a particular concept or object. How Java handles abstraction? Java handles abstraction mainly with the usage of abstract class and interface. Some important extra points on abstraction. Abstraction is specifying the framework and hiding the implementation level information. Concreteness will be built on top of abstraction. It gives you a blueprint to follow while implementing the details. Abstraction reduces the complexity by hiding the low-level details. Now, many feel confused when we discuss abstraction and encapsulation. So, better we should understand the difference here. So, the question is, what is the difference between encapsulation and abstraction? In encapsulation, the variables of a class will be hidden from other classes and can be accessed only through methods of their current class. Therefore, it is known as data hiding. Whereas abstraction is the process of hiding the implementation details from the user. Only the functionality will be provided to the user. Encapsulation can be achieved by declaring all the variables in the class as private or protected and writing the public methods in the class to set and get the values of the variables. We can implement abstraction, on the other hand, using abstract class and interfaces. Let's come to another very important part, that is abstract class versus interface. These concepts are very important and they are very frequent in core Java interviews. Now let's start with abstract class. Generally, abstract classes are created when the requirement is to create several objects that will share some method functionality and differ in some method functionality. The methods that function the same way for every object will be implemented in the abstract superclass. The methods that differ in functionality for each object would be declared abstract in the abstract superclass and implemented in each of the subclasses. The question is it possible to have constructor in an abstract class? Answer is yes. Does abstract class have a default constructor? Yes, it can have a constructor, and once it is defined, it behaves just like any other class's constructor, except that abstract classes can't be directly instantiated, only extended. So the use is therefore always from a subclass's constructor. What is interface? Interface is basically an abstract class that contains all abstract methods. If you remember, in abstract class, you could implement some methods, but in interface, you can't. Although in Java things have changed, I will discuss that later on in other lessons. So again, to start with, an interface is basically an abstract class that contains all abstract methods. That is to say, there is no implementation in the class whatsoever. All the class contains are method headers. Its purpose is similar to that of an abstract class. Only in this case, none of the classes that implement the interface share the same code. They only share the same method name. There are very common examples of usage of interfaces and abstract classes in JDK collections itself. Java.util.collection is an interface with common methods like add, remove, contain, size, etc. Abstract collection is an abstract class which implements this collection interface and overrides some methods like add, remove. This abstract collection is directly extended by classes like abstract list, abstract set. They are directly used with classes like ArrayList, HashSet, etc. So to explain, like at the top level, you have the interface in java.util.collection. If I show you the diagram here, let me scroll down. So this is a rough overview of the collection framework. If you see on the right hand side this rectangle, this yellow colored ellipses represent interface. Now this sky blue color rectangle represents abstract class and the purple color rectangle represents class. So here at the top level, iterable, collection, etc. these are all interfaces. So they have only the method signatures, no implementation at all. Now at the lower level, at abstract collection, then under that abstract list or abstract set, we have abstract classes, meaning some implementations are there. Now this implementations may not be useful for all the classes bottom down. Say I have some implementation at the abstract class level. So I have the concrete implementation here in ArrayList or vector or stack. So I extend the abstract class, I get the functionalities, and wherever required, I override them depending on my specific requirement. So this is a very important concept, where to use abstract class, where to use interface, and they can coexist. It does not mean that if you use interface, you can't use abstract class or vice versa. It is a combination of both. So this collection framework diagram gives us a very good scenario of usage of abstract class and interfaces, where to use what. So with this, we are at the end of this lesson, which is related to Java object-oriented programming concepts. In the next lesson, we will discuss many other questions related to this.